The village that cursed their love ended up surviving because of it. Two cousins fell in love, and the entire village tried to destroy them. But years later, something unexpected happened. What happened next, no one in Umuchukwu was prepared for it. The day Umuchukwu judged them, even the wind refused to move. It was as if the land itself understood that something irreversible was about to happen. But the village was divided in opinions. Women abandoned their cooking fires and domestic duties to express feelings and opinions. Men left their palm wine midway to their lips in shock of the pronouncement, while some nodded their heads in confirmation and satisfaction. Children who usually ran barefoot through the red dust stood still, clinging to their mothers' wrappers. At the center of the village square stood Tochi and Chidera, who had just been banished from the village. The only land they know and have known as their own heritage. They still stood side by side, unbowed and unapologetic. The two young lovers were resolved to face whatever penalty that was thrown at them. But they were completely alone on their resolution. Even if they had support, it must be silently hidden for fear by anyone who dared. "You will deny this abomination before your people," the oldest elder thundered, his voice cracking through the air like dry wood snapping in fire. Tochi's jaw tightened. His hand found Chidera's, and he held it, not loosely, not secretly, but openly, for all to see. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd with an uncanny bewilderment. Chidera did not pull away nor expressed any fear. Instead, she lifted her chin in confidence as if she was expecting what was happening and what she was prepared for. "We will not deny what is true," she said, her voice softer than the elders, but somehow, louder in meaning. A woman wailed from the audience, and an old man spat on the ground in disgust and bitterness. And somewhere in the crowd, two men stepped forward with rage burning in their eyes. They were their fathers. Obinna and Namdi had once been the envy of Umuchukwu. They were brothers by blood, and the most obedient and dedicated siblings that the village had ever produced. They farmed together with tireless dedication in their late father's farmland. They drank together, celebrated together, and were always together as twins. When one built a house, the other carried the wood, giving helping hands and support. Their children grew up like siblings, much closely bonded than the cousins that they were. Tochi was the son that his father, Obinna, was proud of. He was strong, hard-working, with a quiet strength that made elders nod in approval. Chidera was her father, Namdi's joy. She was very beautiful, sharp-witted, with laughter that could soften even the hardest hearts. They had shared everything in common, until now. "You brought this shame into my household," Obinna shouted, pointing a trembling finger at Namdi. "My household?" Namdi barked, stepping forward with uncontrolled rage. "You think your son is innocent? He should have known better. And your daughter should have been raised with dignity." The insult landed like a slap across his face. Steel flashed suddenly and unexpectedly. No one saw who drew the knife first, but they were both having knives in hands. But suddenly, the two men who had once shared palm wine under the same moon were lunging at each other like strangers. The crowd erupted, and abled men rushed forward, restraining them, pulling them apart as curses filled the air. "You have destroyed us, Namdi!" Obinna screamed. "No!" Namdi roared back. "They have destroyed us." But deep down, both men knew the truth. It wasn't destruction that was the case. It was something far more complicated than what they saw. Amongst other things was the spiritual penalties that they could not escape from. Something neither of them could control. It had not started as sin, or abomination as people may think. It had started as familiarity. As children, Tochi and Chidera were inseparable while growing. They fetched water together from the stream, laughing when one slipped on wet stones. They stole mangoes from the same tree, running from the same angry farmer. They slept under the same moonlight during festivals, listening to the same folktales. They were safe with each other, and there was no reason for anyone to raise any eyebrow. That was how it began. And safety is a dangerous thing. Because when the world becomes unpredictable, the heart clings to what feels certain. As they grew older, something shifted between them. Tochi began to notice the way Chidera's laughter lingered in his chest long after she had gone. Chidera began to feel an unfamiliar warmth when Tochi's hand brushed hers. They fought it. God knew, they tried. They avoided each other. They prayed. They buried themselves in work. But love is not something you can starve into silence. It grows quietly and relentlessly. Until one day, it refuses to be ignored. It was behind the old Irako tree that it happened. The same tree where they had once played as children, and the same tree that had witnessed their innocence. Now, it witnessed something different. I don't understand what is happening to me, Chidera whispered with her voice trembling. Tochi stood before her, his chest rising and falling like he had just ran a long distance. I do, he said. She looked up at him, and in that moment, there was no cousin, no law, no tradition. There was only truth. I love you, he said. The words hung in the air. Like a forbidden prayer. Chidera should have stepped back. She probably should have ran at that instant. She should have remembered everything they had been taught. Instead, she stepped closer. So do I, she whispered. And in that moment, they crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. From that moment, they determined not to hold back their true feelings. Days passed, and it was a public knowledge, but they proudly stood for love. The village frowned at them. The elders did not deliberate for long. Tradition had no room for hesitation since everyone was aware of the laws of the land. This is an abomination. How can the young children of this generation not see the dangers that awaits them? The oldest among them declared. The word echoed among the others in attendance. The verdict was heavy and final. You have defiled the laws of our ancestors. You have brought shame upon your families and this land. Chidera felt her grip tighten around Tochi's hand. Almost as a reassurance that they were bound by trust and support for each other. You are cursed, the elder continued. And you are no longer welcome in Umuchukwu. A calabash was lifted, and incantations followed as tradition demanded. And with every word spoken, it felt as though invisible chains were being placed upon them that would rain havoc in their lives. Leave this land, the elder finished, and never return. They left before dawn while the villagers watched them in sorrow. It was generally believed that their existence would be short-lived, wherever they went. No farewell. And no blessings. It was thought to be unnecessary because they were already condemned. Just silence. The path out of Umuchukwu stretched before them, long, unfamiliar, unforgiving. Chidera stumbled once but Tochi's hand was quick to support her as he effortlessly caught her. Are you sure? He asked quietly. She looked back at the village and everything they had ever known. Then she turned forward again. I chose you, and us together, she said. And I will choose you again in the next life. He nodded, and together, they walked into the unknown. The outside world was not kinder. If anything, it was colder. Whispers followed them wherever they went. Eyes judged them as if their deeds was already known to the world, that a fresh new beginning was hard to come by. Even strangers, who did not know their story, seemed to sense that something about them was indeed wrong. They struggled hard and hunger became too familiar. Rejection became routine. There were nights Chidera cried quietly, thinking Tochi was asleep and wouldn't notice. There were days Tochi walked farther than his body could bear, searching for work that never came. Love did not disappear, but it was no longer enough on its own. And yet, they refused to let go. But one thing came out right for them. Their faith in God. They believed strongly that nothing was beyond God. Therefore, no tradition, nor curses was beyond the powers of God. They intensified their search for a powerful real man of God. They found him in a small, forgotten church at the edge of a town that did not care about names. The pastor was not what they expected. He was simple and calm. And when they spoke to him, he listened. Not with judgment, and not with interruption. But with something they had not felt in a long time. Understanding. What you have done, he said slowly, is not something I can approve. Their hearts sank. But I also see something rare, and it is not in my place to judge or condemn you, he continued. They looked up. You did not choose convenience, he said. You chose each other, even when it cost you everything. There was a long silence. Then he sighed. I will pray for you, and carry out some spiritual assignments on your behalf. The rest is in God's hands. But you have chosen to come to God in prayers. He will give you rest. The night of prayer was unlike anything they had experienced. It was not loud, and neither was it dramatic. But it was powerful. Words were spoken, and of course, hands were laid. And something shifted. The weight they had carried since Umuchukwu was lifted. Not completely, because of their ties to the only life they knew, and the things they missed. But the main burden they carried was lifted enough. When it was over, the pastor looked at them for a long time. Live your lives, he said simply. And that was all. They started a new life from nothing. A small hut and a borrowed piece of land. They labored hardly with persistence and hope. And slowly, and much to their excited relief, things began to change. Tochi found steady work. Chidera started trading. Their home grew. Their laughter returned. And then, their children came. Each child was a miracle. Not because they were perfect, but because they were proof that something good could come from something the world had condemned. Years later, far away in Umuchukwu, a truck arrived. Fully loaded with bags of rice for the people of Umuchukwu. No explanation was given, and no name was attached. It was just an act of generosity. The villagers were confused, but less concerned and happy for such a relief. And so, they accepted it gratefully. The next year, it happened again. And again. And again. What began as confusion became expectation. The rice became an annual tradition. A yearly blessing to village, and they celebrated with thanksgiving to the gods of the land and their ancestors. A blessing that no one questioned. Until someone finally did. Some of the elders had suspected that there could be a particular politician that was enticing them with gifts, so that he would get their votes in return, during election. So, they decided to investigate and find out the source. So that they could arrange appropriate appreciation. Their findings was most shocking. When the elders discovered the source, silence fell. Not the silence of judgment. But the silence of realization, confusion and reminiscence. It was them. The ones they had cursed and banished from the land. The ones they had banished and told never to return. The ones they had erased. They had given praises to the gods for the gifts they had been receiving to feed their families. Yet it was the same gods they had invoked to pronounce curse and banish their children. The elders did not travel with pride. They traveled with something unfamiliar that was seen as a sign of weakness. Humility. When they arrived, they did not find shame. They found peace, and a happy family home. A family and a life that had flourished in spite of everything. We have come to ask for forgiveness, the eldest and leader of the delegation said. Tochi and Chidera looked at each other. Years of pains and years of growth had taught them better and compensated them greatly. The power of love and faith. All in one glance. Then Chidera smiled. We forgave you long ago. Umuchukwu did not change overnight. Tradition remained what it was, and the laws of the land remained. But something shifted. Not in the rules, but in the hearts of the people. Because sometimes, the greatest rebellion is not defiance. It is kindness. And sometimes, the ones we reject become the ones who teach us what love truly means. The village that once cast them out survived for years on the kindness of the love it called a curse.